We're at Oxford University asking students whether they identify as a socialist or as a capitalist. Are you a socialist or a capitalist?
Oh God, socialist.
Socialist?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, oh gosh, I'm a bit caught off guard. I would say
Take your time.
I'm not a capitalist. So, does that mean I have to be a socialist? I guess.
Let's start with what you don't like about capitalism.
Well, I'm a humanities student, and I feel like everything I've learned has taught me that having profitability as your main purpose probably doesn't always make you a great person. Yeah.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Maybe. Okay, that's interesting. How do you feel about the invention of the iPhone, for example?
Well, I've got one.
So have I. They're useful, aren't they?
They're pretty handy. Yeah.
Do you reckon the free market, and I'm not talking about unregulated Wild West American corporatism or monopolies, I'm not talking about that. The idea of capitalism is that you and I come up with an idea, so it's all about technological innovation, advances in how we think, what we do, creating products, supply and demand. We do that. It could be pharma, healthcare, whatever, saving lives, there you go, tanks to fend off Russians, whatever you're into. Do you think that comes from ideas, and then you and I going and doing that? And then we need a team and we need people to go and do the work, and then they hopefully achieve some sort of job satisfaction, get paid for it, and then as an idea, as a marketing, as an economics model, capitalism, that has some benefits, some pluses at basic level.
Do I agree with that?
Would you agree that has some utility?
Yeah.
Sure. But you identify as a socialist?
I mean, I think it's quite a difficult thing to go and ask people, like, are you a socialist or a capitalist? Like, do you think that you can only be one or the other?
Typically, yeah. Having asked this question as many times as I've asked, typically, yeah, very much so.
Okay.
Well, for example, I was with a chap earlier on, he's part of the Socialist Workers Club, so
Right.
it's devout socialist. No pay is ever enough, the unions rule, and a lot of Marxists I speak to say it's all about bringing the unions back, not about anarchy, it's about bringing the unions back and bringing down government, but the unions would become government by definition. Right. So it's about asking students what they think about whether they are actually part of the free market and they want to be left alone by the government, or whether they actually want government control. So socialism typically means that the state controls the taxation and the money, and then they distribute as they see fit. So can we trust politicians to do that? Can we trust the government?
Oh, can we trust the government to, well, the current government or government in general?
Just government in general and politicians. Can we trust them to do the right thing with our money?
I mean,
from a high taxation perspective. See, if there's a low taxation government, then it's limited government economically. Regardless of what they're doing culturally, it's limited economically. So which world would you rather live in? When you look at your pay packet with your high-flying career from Oxford, and you say 50-60% maybe has gone on tax, but the government decide where it goes?
To be honest, I don't know. I don't know. I feel like until that actually happens to me, then I probably haven't. I don't know if I trust the government right now.
And with your money, not just trust, but with your money as well.
Yeah, probably not.
After your degree and everything that you've had to work for, etc., etc. Okay, so let me leave you this thought. A lot of people I speak to, I say capitalist or socialist, and they say socialism. Actually, they might not be a socialist, but actually rather it's in opposition to unregulated capitalism because they see the inequality in the world.
Right. So what are you?
I'm pro-free market. So the government should not interfere with us. They should not interfere with you and I getting on. We need to feed our families, feed ourselves, and we get on. So limited government in that regard. But we see that socialism's trending and on the rise again, which is rebrands itself every 10 to 15 years.
So are you a bit slightly concerned by that?
Slightly concerned about what's getting pumped out of our universities, yeah. So we work exclusively on university campuses to try and get raw data. Yeah, and it's worrying. And a lot of people, the other thing they say before we close is, I'm not sure, I need to do more research. But off the bat, they'll say, I'm a socialist, or I'm more socialist. But actually, socialism's never worked anywhere in the world.
Interesting. Okay.
What a great interview.
Sorry, that was like the opposite of a good interview.
No, not at all, because what we do is we get honest opinions, because it's not mainstream media.
Okay.
We're at Oxford University asking students whether they're a capitalist or a socialist. Are you a capitalist or a socialist?
Socialist.
Socialist. So I find that some people often break it down. They say they define the difference between communism and socialism and all this other type of stuff. And I say, look, socialism means the government control a huge amount of taxation and then they distribute equally from there. Would you agree that's what socialism, in a bite-sized chunk format to a child, would that be socialism as far as you're concerned?
I think
Redistributed wealth?
to some extent, yeah. I don't think I know enough to say enough about it, in the sense that, like, I don't feel confident enough in, I don't know that much about it, but, I think so.
Okay, so
Yeah.
no, that's interesting. So when you say you're not a capitalist, you're a socialist, what is it about socialism that you like?
I just really don't like capitalism, and I think that people deserve to be treated fairly, and there should be less inequality in society.
Okay, so when you say you don't like capitalism, are there companies that you're thinking of that you know of where you think actually that's workers aren't treated fairly, for example? They're all paid a salary, but I presume you're saying not enough. Are there any
Yeah,
companies?
and I also just think political structures and kind of legislations and stuff that are in place, and the kind of ideologies behind it, of the kind of meritocratic sort of thing of oh yeah, if you work for it you can get it, which then kind of completely ignores the fact that everyone's coming from a different starting place and there are lots of other things that can get in the way.
You don't believe in meritocracy?
Not in the extreme sense. Obviously there are certain things you can do, but I think as an idea it's very toxic and just not great.
So what about all the students at Oxford University, the most prestigious university in the world?
Yeah.
How would you feel? How does that link to what you're saying there? So if you're here at Oxford University, that's about as privileged and as special as it gets.
Mm-hmm. And it's not there are things that they're supposedly trying to do to reduce the unfair things, but the truth of the matter is people are coming from different backgrounds, and there are people who are much more likely to get in just from where they've come from, and there are people who work ridiculously hard and don't get in here. And also with interviews on the day, you could be having a bad day and not get in.
Just closing up, with regards to low tax versus high tax, would you be a fan of high taxation as a socialist by saying the government, we trust them, we trust politicians, and the government will redistribute effectively, rather than the free market argument, which is the government should be limited economically and we should be left to get on with our own devices?
Again, this is not something I claim to know very much about. I'm not as educated on politics as I would like to be.
Sure.
And it's not something, and I don't know enough about how it works and the ins and outs of it, but I would say that I think I am for higher taxing, but with more nuance than that about how that's decided, because obviously it's very difficult to do that in a way that is fair, but a way to make it fairer than it currently is, and stopping extortionate wealth on the higher end.
Are you a capitalist or a socialist?
I would say I am a socialist.
So,
Why are you a socialist?
I'm gonna rephrase to a socialist in a market-based economy, i.e. government intervention, to ensure everybody starts at the same level or has the same prospects.
So we're talking economics now, not so identifying as a socialist economically, yeah?
Yeah.
to be fair, I don't verge to one of the two things drastically. I just tend towards that more because yeah.
In what sense isn't it economic?
So you've got cultural, societal, and economic. So I mean it in an economics capacity when I say, are you a socialist or a capitalist? Socialist being state control, high taxation, the government, we trust the politicians, we trust the government, and then they they distribute the money as they see fit. Free market economics is you, me, our families are left alone to go and do what we want, essentially. I'm not saying that there would be no regulation, but the idea of capitalism is that idea. We go and create companies, we create jobs, we create wealth.
Yes.
So you would say based on that you're a socialist? Economically?
I think there should be the free market with government intervention such that where you end up isn't dependent on where you start.
Does that make you a capitalist then?
Sure, but with
Regulation.
And a level of government intervention.
And what about you?
Yeah, I feel talking more about the taxation point of view, I feel taxes is a very important issue, and especially because I'm from Italy, and in Italy there is a big issue with taxes, and so the fact that not everyone has to tax
based on their actual income, and that is like something that I feel like should be solved, and that's why like I would tend towards more like socialist point of view to give everyone like more of an equal.
Give me an anecdote of the situation in Italy, because I know a bit about Italy and Greece. When you say there's an issue with tax, in what regard?
Well, the thing is, like, rich people are not taxed enough, and like also many do get away with it, and the government doesn't really do anything to stop this.
Why do you think that they don't do? We hear this argument a lot about Amazon is always brought up, Google, Apple. Why do you think they're not taxed, regardless of how much they should be taxed? Why do you think they're not taxed enough? Take Volkswagen, for example. I mean, you guys know how many people these employ. Do you know how many people? I may not be in favour of Amazon at all, but they employ 650,000 people worldwide.
Yeah.
Those people have jobs, regardless of whether it's right or wrong or whatever. They then feed their families from that. So, in terms of the example with Italy about the business owners and the rich being taxed further, do you think there's a reason why they aren't taxed by the state, as you say?
Because they are bringing in like the income and like the possibilities to everyone to work. But like I don't think like while this is true, I don't think that it's like right. So it is a difficult situation, but like from an idealistic point of view, like I don't think that this is like the way it should be. So like idealistically, I would like everyone to be taxed in a fair way, because there are people who are suffering from it. So
if they do create all like incredible amounts of value, that's something that they create for more or less society. I think they benefit from a healthy, well-educated population, and so the tax system should ensure that them benefiting from the functioning society, they also give back to it.
Are you a capitalist or a socialist?
I have no strong political opinions.
No? But more economics based then?
Well, I don't really do much research into it, but I'd say I probably lean more left than I do.
Sure, so I think when I ask that question, people often say, I'm not into politics, but economically, we talk about free market versus more state control based, and people talk about Scandinavia and other such parts of the world where the government have tried to control things before, or they form like a social democracy, whereas free market says the market will do what it wants and it's unregulated and people can go about and get on with it and thrive and survive or not. So forget politics, just economics. When you say you lean more left, do you mean in terms of distribution of wealth throughout society to make things fairer and more equal?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that is the aim and that's the goal. As I've said, I'm not exactly the most involved in this sort of thing, but yeah, obviously there's certain elements of like social mobility that need to be promoted. And I think the way that the current system is going, it's not exactly aiding in that, and especially with the cost of living crisis, there have been so many issues arising with people unable to afford their bills and their homes. So yeah, like I definitely do lean more left in that regard.
Leaning more left economically. So
economically and
socially.
Yeah, and socially.
So with regards to taxation, then would you be in favour of higher taxation to then redistribute? So for example, your paycheck when you graduate from a prestigious university, high flying career, loads of money, you'd be happy to see high taxation come out of your paycheck, go to the government, and then they distribute as they see fit.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as long as I have enough to live and I have enough to have a happy life, then that's fine. I also think probably a significant amount of policy should be directed at like larger businesses. I mean, we see like Amazon and Apple, they find ways to get around it, but like in effect, those are the areas where the money is being hoarded. So why not find ways of redistributing that throughout society?
Do you know how many employees Amazon has? It's a really big number.
Not off the top of my head.
It's about 600,000 worldwide.
Yeah.
So obviously no one wants to see that many employees out of a job. No one wants to see that. So in terms of taxing them harder, or so you said Amazon and Apple, yeah?
Yeah.
They're responsible for employing a large volume of people. So.
I fully agree, but is the distribution of income throughout that equal? No. Certain people get significantly more than others. I mean, Jeff Bezos is one of the richest men in the world. So
same with nurses and teachers striking as well. It's about more pay essentially to those people.
Yeah, exactly.
How much more roughly would you?
I couldn't exactly come up with a number off the top of my head.
Sure. If nurses,
and it's not. I mean, obviously, it's something that you need a really good knowledge of this sort of thing to have a solid idea about what to do. I mean, I've worked in like sustainability companies where we deal with policy and government policy, and it's not an easy process. But I mean, change is definitely needed. So
I'll give you an example. Just one. You've been great. One example of where the government is deciding where the money goes. So that's state-controlled items. You have diversity managers working in the NHS at £66,000 a year. What are your thoughts on that?
sorry, I missed that. I missed that.
Sure.
question.
So in terms of state control and socialism, we are living in a lot of that Tory socialistic world, believe it or not. So diversity managers currently exist on £66,000 a year in the NHS. So the NHS, the left would argue the NHS is on its knees. We need to give it even more money, because more money than God's not enough, apparently. You've got diversity managers on £66,000 a year, and feel free to fact check me on that.
By diversity manager, what are you referring to?
I have absolutely no idea what they do. I agree. It's insane, but they exist, and they're on 66 grand a year.
Don't spin what I'm saying.
No, that's what I'm
I
saying.
just don't have. Well, this is something that maybe should be researched before asking questions.
Diversity.
I think.
You're asking me what a diversity manager does. I don't know. I wouldn't do that, but I presume it's something to do along the lines of diversity, inclusion, and equality, right? It's diversity. So diversity means different skin colours, different backgrounds, different faiths.
Which is very important.
So
and to be fair, giving a set amount of value for that is not really acceptable. And in terms of, I have no values in my mind about how much people should be paid, because I don't think that's a question that should necessarily be asked. I think it's in reference to we've seen with the nurses' strikes, they are clearly underpaid, and I don't necessarily think taking away money from a role that is very important is then the right option, when there are other places where, say, that money could come from.
you'd be pro. So simple question, simple answer. You'd be pro something like a £66,000 a year salary, which is enormous, I think, going to something like diversity managers when we have the crisis we have. You'd be okay with that? Your opinion?
Well, it's
Depending on the role.
I think you can focus on the notion that they're getting 66 grand, which is
I think it's a lot of money. I think that's a lot of money.
It's a fair amount of money, but I'm not the sort of person to say whether that is right or not. I mean, diversity inclusion is very needed, and it's for someone who is more involved in government to see if that money, but 66,000 is minimal compared to other places.
Okay, but in terms of giving government control and giving the state control, that means we trust politicians and their decisions and what they do with the money.
Well, no. Well, that's the thing. It's not a great system, but there is no great system realistically.
No, I totally appreciate that.
It's a bit of a shit one all round, I think. But yeah, I guess we have to.
We can only work with what we've got, can't we?
Well, exactly. Yeah, and we've seen how recently government hasn't been very on it with the way they've gone about things. So yeah, it's a tricky situation. I think you just really have to have people who are involved in those processes, and really, because I mean, the majority of politicians, they never step foot in those sort of positions, so how should they necessarily know? I think, I mean, not that I'm saying anything here, but having people that know more about that side of it and the challenges that they face, maybe more representation in that regard would be good.
Well, that's what Labour want to represent, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. More voices from every aspect of society. So yeah.